I love being able to share with all of you powerful stories, inspirational stories. And today we have two ladies joining us who have come together as partners in life. I almost said partners in crime, but that's not the case.
Oh, we say that.
Yeah, we
You
do.
can say that.
You'll see.
But it's partners in life because both of them bring to the conversation a unique experience in life. And they have together written a best-selling book called Brilliantly Resilient, Reset, Rise, and Reveal Your Brilliance. And with that, I want to welcome in Kristin Smedley and Mary Fran Bontempo. Bontempo? What do you prefer?
Bontempo, you got it right,
I
Bill.
got one right. It's about time. And you ladies have really spent a lot of virtual time together. I don't know how much in-person stage time because your stories have kind of spilled over into a lot of public appearances, a lot of speaking engagements, and sharing hope with an audience who in many cases is populated by people who are hurting. So Mary Fran, let me kind of start our conversation by having you lay the groundwork for what Brilliantly Resilient is all about.
So, Kristin, first of all, thank you for having us, Bill. We're delighted to be here. Kristin and I met a few years ago, probably maybe 4 years ago or so now. We were brought together by a mutual friend. We still refer to her as a friend, although there are times that we question her sanity in bringing the two of us together. But we were brought together with a group of other women in a mastermind. Everybody was kind of working on their businesses. And Kristin and I, after meeting, realized that through our personal experiences, my son struggled with substance abuse and heroin addiction for many years. And Kristin has two boys who were born blind. So we realized in sharing our personal stories with one another that we had kind of bumbled and stumbled our way through what we realized eventually was a process of getting through our challenges, and in talking about how hard that was and how we wished we had had a resource, we suddenly had a eureka moment and realized that we could in fact be the resource that we didn't have for other people who were struggling with what seemed to be insurmountable challenges, because we realized that we had gone through a very similar process unbeknownst to each other at the time, or ourselves even. And in talking about it, we were like, oh, I did that. Oh, I did that. And that's kind of how Brilliantly Resilient was born. And I'm sure Kristin has something she can add to that.
Well, you know what? The thing is, Bill, it was also coupled with the fact that we were building very successful businesses. I have a very successful nonprofit and we were TEDx speakers, and everyone kept saying to us, you've got these successful lives and you smile all the time. Like, how is that possible when they were hearing our backstory? So as Mary Fran said, people were coming to us with their challenges and how did you get through it? How'd you get through it? We realized it was a process that both of us had done. And like she said, we were just called to be the resource that we didn't have. And it's been absolutely, to use our word, brilliant ever since. Perfect? Nope. But
nope, we don't do perfect.
Well, I've in observing people in general throughout the pandemic, there is something that everybody has been looking for, and that is a reason to smile. I've referred to this era of our lives as a forced sabbatical, and that opportunity to do some resetting, to take care of the things that have always been on your "if I only had time" list. Yeah, if I only had time, I'd read more. Well, if you haven't read more by now, you're never going to read more. If I only had time, I'd lose some weight. You've had a lot of time, and if you haven't lost something, then you need to throw out the cookies. I mean, that's so. This forced sabbatical also has allowed a lot of people to examine how they handle adversity, and I have to think that that's really one of the factors that has opened up audiences to your message. Mary Fran, when you mentioned the struggles with your son, there are so many parents right now listening to our conversation who have older children, or maybe they're still at home, maybe they're younger children. They're struggling with addiction of some sort. It might be to substance, it might be to gaming, it might be to pornography, it might be to something, but it's an addictive thing because they have been shut down in every other area of life. They can't go do anything because we've overreacted to all this, but I digress. And so when you have the chance to talk to parents who are really concerned about their own children, you bring to it this authenticity, real life experience, and what do you want them to know?
Well, first of all, this clearly, and I mean, the word unprecedented has been used ad nauseum about everything in terms of this time, but it is unprecedented. And in fact, addiction levels have been increasing, and it's exacerbated the problem because, as you said correctly, there's really no other outlet. And when someone is addicted and that's what they use to feel good, at this point, a lot of them, it's been their only outlet. So when I talk to parents and family members who are struggling with this, the first thing that they have to understand is that unless the addicted person is willing to go and get help and to learn, there's not a whole lot you can do. So then you have to focus on setting up safe boundaries for yourself and really equipping yourself, taking care of yourself well enough to make sure that you're ready for battle, because it's a battle. I mean, any kind of adversity that we face is metaphorically a battle. But we have to really hone in on that self-care thing. We have to get clear of this reset piece that Kristin and I talk about. There are three parts of it. There's that getting clear on your values, there's getting clear on your perception, and there's controlling the controllables. So each piece of that, when I talk to families, and same thing with Kristin and I, when we talk to people, that clarifying your values, what's really important to you, what are your non-compromise things? And when you're dealing with a family member who's in addiction, they have to know that this is a line we don't cross here for me. So if you're planning on crossing it, then we're at an impasse here and we have to make a change. But that idea of clarifying your values is huge. The perspective issue is huge, and Kristin can talk a little bit to that. And that last piece of controlling the controllables. What can you do in this moment? You are not going to cure addiction. You're not going to cure it in one moment. What can you do in this moment? That 15-minute time frame that I talk about with this 15-minute master book that I wrote. What can you do in that time frame that's going to make things better? Not solved, not perfect, better.
Is that 15-minute window the time when an incident has flared up? Is that what that's referring to? Is what am I going to do with this moment?
Actually, that's you really hit the nail on the head, because when I wrote that book, it was because of that, because people would say to us when they learned about our situation with my son, oh, you have to take it one day at a time. And we were like, one day? You have clearly never lived with an addict, because things change exponentially in moments. So we were down to living in 15-minute chunks. And that's how we got through that. What can we do in this 15 minutes? And if we don't have to do anything in this 15 minutes, let's take that 15 minutes and rest. Or let's take that 15 minutes to think of one step a little bit, maybe down the road. Who can we call? What expert can we call that can give us advice? Because you got to put your hand up in these situations. I'm not an expert in addiction. I needed help.
Kristin, I want to bring you into the conversation as well. And I'm thinking of how different people react to different challenges. There is a moment of decision. Mary Fran was alluding to it on a frequent basis in the world of addiction. And then as you are the mom of two adorable kids that they can't see, my guess is, we don't know each other, so you can set me straight if you need to. My guess is that you had a decision to make, which is, what do I want for these kids? And are they going to be on the victim bus forever, or are they going to be productive and in important and difference-making young people, and as they grow up, adults? And if so, how am I going to help them get there? Where did your journey turn when you learned that you had a couple of kids that were not able to see?
Well, I got to tell you, Bill, I'm not as muscled up as Mary Fran was the day she was in that emergency room to save her son's life. I am more of, maybe like a lot of listeners out there, that kind of cried my way through it for the first couple of years. I would smile with a big fake smile all day long and literally prayed every single night that blindness would be taken away for 3.5 years. Now, you know, I dreamt my whole life to be a mom. I mean, it was of all of my plans, it was my biggest one. And as all of my hopes and dreams for that baby were growing, as my belly was growing, by the time he was born, Bill, I had him like, okay, is he going to be the starting quarterback or is he going to be the starting pitcher? Like, which one are we going to go with? You know, and he's going to be the valedictorian, and I'm envisioning his wedding, like so many of us do. And then when I heard at 4 months, your son is blind, and all of those dreams crashed, I was mad. I was really mad. And because I was one of those rule followers. You know, I did everything I was supposed to. I'm from a big family. I was the one everybody could rely on. I was in church, not wrinkled every Sunday morning. You know, I did everything I was supposed to. And then my dreams are gone. Are you kidding me? And this kid just enters the world, you know, innocent as can be. And now he can't even partake. Plus, you know, I do give myself grace now. Michael's 21 now. But, you know, what I realized is I didn't know anybody that was blind and succeeding. I didn't know anyone. I didn't know what the potential was, right? So for those people that are listening that are in a situation that they know nothing about, that's part of the issue when you have no information. So good old Kristin back then spent 3 years praying it away. And every single morning I would wake up, go in his room, he's still blind, and I'm mad every single day, like, you know, wash, rinse, repeat. And then it was actually when I was pregnant with my second son, when I was having a moment of, there is no way I could do this a second time. And it was Michael, my 3.5-year-old, that bounced into my bedroom that morning as I was sobbing. And he said to me, "Mommy, isn't this the best day ever?" And I thought, in my mind, I'm thinking, racing, like, you have no idea how awful this situation is. You have no clue what your life is not going to be. And all I asked him was, why? Why would you say something like that? And Bill, to him, it was the sun was up, he had all of his toys, and he was completely happy. And I realized in that moment, at that moment, blindness was taken away from me, that I had prayed, it was taken away from me, not him. And I had been praying for it to be taken away. And that was the moment that I surrendered to the situation and said, okay. Well, actually, look, I'm a Philly girl. I was kind of like this. All right, you know, to God, you know me. I can't do this. I'm going to need some help here. And that's when I realized that it was up to me to figure out the tools of blindness and get this kid what he needed. All of my dreams were gone, which ended up to be a phenomenal thing, because all I said to Michael and then Mitchell, 3 years, you know, he got diagnosed also. I said, look, I don't know what's possible, but I'm going to get you what you need and follow your lead. And they've led me to incredible places that I never could have dreamt of. But I had to look at it differently. I had to see that Michael wasn't bothered by blindness. I was. And I had to move on. I'm a little slow learner, though.
We all are. We all are. Our guest here on The Big Impact, Kristin Smedley and Mary Fran Bontempo, the co-authors of Brilliantly Resilient, an Amazon bestseller. And they have, in normal times, been on stages all over the country sharing their message of inspiration and hope. And Kristin, as you're talking about the anger that you dealt with when your dreams were altered, I think that's a common experience for any parent, especially who doesn't have things going the way they had always dreamed. Mary Fran, did you go through anger? Were you shaking your fist at God at some point and saying, "How dare you give me this struggle to deal with"?
I mean, I say this often, and I'm sure quite a few of your audience will appreciate this. I was Marsha Brady growing up. Like I did everything right. I didn't smoke. I didn't drink. I didn't curse. All of that has changed now, except for the smoking part. I do drink occasionally, and I have been known to say things that I shouldn't. But back then, I was Marsha Brady. I did all of the right things. I was a church singer. I was very involved in our church. I was a substitute teacher at my kids' school. I was a youth minister at our parish. I was following, as Kristin said, following all of the rules. And I think that is the issue. We feel this anger when we feel like we did all the right things and things shouldn't be the way they are. And Kristin and I came up with this: when you finally let go of what you think things should be, then you make room for what they could be. And sometimes that means that you have a problem you have to face, but you have to let go of what you think things are supposed to be, or you're never going to deal with it. The beauty of it is, as in Kristen's story, when she let go of what she thought life should be for her kids, she saw what it could be. So, it's a real reality check, and anger is a perfectly natural sentiment, and we don't dismiss that when we tell people to deal with their challenges. You have to feel it, but
Yeah.
you don't live there. You make
Yeah.
a decision that you're just visiting that place. You're not going to set up your bags and unpack and everything and live there.
There is a difficulty in being the parent of children who are hurting in some way or in some way facing a challenge because you want to fix it instantly. They want you to fix it instantly.
Yeah.
My son's 22 and he's dealing with a bad back. It's not the end of the world, but it feels like it at times. He's been horizontal since before Christmas and still trying to find relief for a herniated disc and all these things. So I say that not to compare at all, but to just say that as a dad, I would pay anything. I would do whatever it took to relieve him of that pain because it's fairly constant and it's really getting to be a little bit long here. For both of you, and Kristin, I'll start with you. When you're the mom, my understanding is that desire is magnified even more. Moms have the mama bear kind of an approach to it, and if the mom is a Philly girl, then it goes right through the roof. I mean, you can't even begin to understand. So how did you transition from what you were praying would happen to dealing with what was happening? It's a very big difference in those two approaches.
Yeah. Well, like Mary Fran said, I just had to make that decision. Once I realized that Michael, here's the thing, and this is horrible to admit, but it is what it is. I dreamt my whole life to be this extraordinary mom, like I had a role model for, right? And then to realize that day, the only thing standing in my Michael's way was me, his mom, and my limited perception of what his life was going to be. So I had to flip it, and then I had to buck up. I was an educator. I was a teacher, which I had planned my whole life to be. And I had to go use my skills as a teacher and my knowledge of education and what was supposed to be happening in his world and infuse that into blind skills and figure out how he was going to make that work. And then I will say my Philly muscles and my little bit of a chip on my shoulder did help through the 12 years of him being in public schools, because my boys have gone all through public school. It did help with muscling up to individualized education plan teams and schools that didn't want any parts of him being or his brother in the regular school system, and threatening voucher programs and learning to call the media. And, I'd sit there all muscled up and then I'd be crying in my car on the way home. Like, what did I just do?
But you had to go to bat for them all
also-
the time, right?
What's that?
You had to go to bat for them all the time.
Yes, but then the key became right about second, third grade, they had to start learning their own, going to bat for themselves. And I think it's a little bit of a disconnect that we as parents have with our kids. And I know that we do it in so much love for them that we want to go to bat, we want to move the mountains out of their way. But if we're not along the way empowering them with the same tools, then they end up, oh gosh, how are we supposed to go out in the world? And when one little adversity hits, they don't know what to do with it, right? So that's one of the other blessings of blindness is I had to be the guide on the side of my kids constantly. And they were learning as I went and learned. And they managed those, they were part of those teams in second grade. And by high school, they managed their own education. So now Michael's at Penn State and he's managing his own college experience.
Let me make sure I have the timeline right. Michael was born, and then 3.5-ish years later, you had another child who was born blind.
Yep.
And was that a kick in the gut, or was it, all right, I'm ready for this, for you?
Well, to be honest, anytime you hear that any of your kids have anything other than perfect health, it is a sucker punch to the heart. But I will say, I had the one thing this time around that was the most lacking when Michael was diagnosed, and that was a role model. I had Michael. I was able to watch him for 3.5 years figure things out and still be happy. And I knew that Mitch would do the same. Was I upset that I'd have to have it times two? Yes. And there are still times when it is just exhausting to have two kids facing the same thing, just with the different challenges that come with that. However, having Michael, I was able to buck up within a couple of weeks and get the two of them out there. And that was interesting to see how different they are. I guess everybody expects they have the same retinal condition, they're going to be the exact same person. Oh my God, they couldn't be more different, you know? But it has been extraordinary. And I did end up having a third child that's sighted, which was a whole nother ball of wax to see how she fit into the picture. And it's just been brilliant ever since.
Mary Fran, I'm thinking of the difficulties that continue. I hope that your son is doing better these days.
He's very well. I had a very positive end to his experience. He is now a married father of 3. He still is very active in the recovery community, but yes, we did have a positive resolution to that, which doesn't always happen. So
yeah,
we were very blessed.
In one of the other programs that I host, it's called Marriage Talk, and my co-host is an actual licensed counselor and therapist, not me just making things up. And he often will talk about the stress that this sort of life situation that both Kristin and Mary Fran are coming through, the stress that can put on relationships, on marriages, that kind of a thing. Can you share with our listeners how the rest of your life unfolded as you were focusing a lot of attention on your children? And if you don't mind kind of being raw with us in that way, how did that part of life go? Because I know that a lot of people in your audience are struggling with that level of anxiety. We want the kids to be better. In the meantime, sometimes we sacrifice what all is going on around us.
Well, I think you have to respect your way of dealing with it. And I say that because my way of dealing with it and my husband's way of dealing with it were very different. He's a joiner. He wanted to go to the Al-Anon meetings and talk about it and get the resources and all that. I am more of the private, okay, let me figure this out in my head first kind of a person. And I didn't share a lot of what was going on because I was ashamed and embarrassed. That's part of that. Unfortunately, I think it's still part of that world. When you have a child, it's much less than it used to be back when I was dealing with it. But when you have a child who goes in that direction, I think your natural tendency as a mother is, what did I do wrong? What did I miss? So part of it was about forgiving myself for anything that I might have done and not spending a lot of time thinking, oh my gosh, because, I did come to the conclusion. I was like, I was in church all the time. I didn't model this behavior for him. Like he didn't get this from me. So I think you have to respect what you're feeling. You have to not live in that place of poor me and pity. You have to respect where the other person is if if you're in a marriage or in a relationship. But I think you also have to encourage each other, again, not to live there. This does not have to define every single part of your existence. You have to seek out some measures of normalcy. You have to seek out some light. 2 of the funniest books that I wrote at that time period, because I knew I needed to seek out lightness and joy and find that balance. You cannot submerge yourself in these trials and expect to come out in any way whole. You still have to seek the light. And again, I go back to doing what you can actually do to affect the situation, not living in the land of magical thinking, not I wish, not if only, not coulda, woulda, shouldas. What can I actually do? And take those moments of joy where you can find them.
How about your journey in that regard, Kristin?
Well, as we always say with me and Mary Fran, we could not be more different. Our lives are incredibly different. I will say this to your listeners, I'm looking at a picture of somebody that was on our show a couple of months ago, Loriana, Mary Fran, and she battled with cancer. And her thing was she wanted to live a healthy lifestyle, and how we should all live healthy because we need to be at our premium health when an illness comes, right? I will say the same thing for marriages and relationships. You want to be at your best. You want to have work to have a healthy relationship, because things are going to come. And if you're not healthy in that relationship, then it's going to blow holes wide open. And the other thing that Mary Fran said was you deal with it differently. When one person doesn't deal with it, the repercussions of that are horrific, is the only word I can use. And I'm protective of the journey that we've been through. Unfortunately, I've been on a divorce journey for 4 years. And all I will say is, because of not dealing with it and some other issues that my ex-husband just isn't healthy, it just unraveled. But I will say that my kids and I are the healthiest and the happiest that we have ever been on this journey. And all of the work, especially in this Reset, Rise, and Revealing Your Brilliance, this process has made all 4 of us at the top of our game now. But it's been a journey where there have been some very low lows. But the beauty of that is we were all able to reset, rise, and reveal our brilliance together. And it's like a foursome that is a force to be reckoned with.
I can attest to that. That's true.
We are visiting with Kristin Smedley and Mary Fran Bontempo, the co-authors of Brilliantly Resilient. And Kristin, you did some time on stage, I believe, as a TEDx talk speaker. Is that correct? So maybe people can go online and watch both of you give your presentations, even though they can't get into a crowded theater these days to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, I do encourage everybody to go and look up our TED Talks, because it goes deeper. Each of them go deeper into our stories, and especially for mine, about any parent that's struggling with their child just isn't either living the life that they had thought, or an illness or something big has hit the family. I go through the process of what that meant to me and for me, and the transformation that happened.
There is a pretty fun episode of Seinfeld, which I'm sort of addicted to for all these years, where George and Jerry are going to sit down and begin writing the script for the pilot episode. They've been hired by NBC to make a pilot. So they're sitting in Jerry's apartment, and they both have notebooks. And one of them says, "What do we start with? How about, hey?" So they write down, "Hey." And the next line is, "How's it going? How's it going?" Then they take a break for like a day, because they think they've made some pretty good headway. I'm trying to picture what it was like for the two of you when you got together to begin writing, because you are very different personalities and you come to it with very different storylines. So you end up with a book that everybody on Amazon's loving, Brilliantly Resilient. How was the process? What was the process like? Because you had to kind of get to know each other first as well.
Oh, we for some reason, we figured each other out right away. So we both know exactly what we're dealing with each other. And that, frankly, is the beauty of our relationship, because I know what Kristin's strengths are. She knows what mine are. And we are both very happy to go, "Not my thing. That's on you."
Yep.
So I have taken to calling us, and I think you'll appreciate this reference, Bill. I have taken to calling us Elton John and Bernie Taupin. She's Elton John. I'm Bernie. I sit in the background and type like a maniac and write stuff, and I hand it to her, and she goes, "Pooh, pooh," and puts the little pizzazz in it and her sparkles and all that. And it works beautifully, again, because we don't take our relationship for granted for a minute. We are so respectful of each other's gifts and brilliance, and very comfortable saying, "That's on you." And she feels, I think, the same way about me. That's on, what she doesn't want to do or she can't do. And you know what? We know each other's family life. We're friends. So whenever one of us is like, "I just can't right now," the other one picks up the slack. It works very well, which is unusual, because everybody who knows us is like, "Wait, you two work together?"
I know, it's so funny, but what your listeners, if you get the book, you'll see in the beginning, and when we talk about the reset, Mary Fran hit on it a little while ago, about one of the top things in resetting is, what are your core values? And we have realized that is the through line through everything in your life. So with Mary Fran and I, we work so well together because we have very similar core values. We are very big on respect, trust, and fun. We each have some other ones sprinkled in there, But in terms of us working together, each of us has so much respect for the other one and their mission in the world. And it's almost like I want to make sure that all of my to-dos in this partnership are done, because I don't want to do anything that would bring us down or make a hurdle. And Mary Fran's the exact same way. There's a work ethic there. And honestly, fun being one of our biggest things, we do make everything as much fun, because I guess we have a point of reference that, man, we know when stuff sucks, and we don't want to go back to Suckville. We like to stay in Funville. But our entire journey has, especially in the year of when we launched to be together on all the stages around the world, and then the world shut down, our journey since is the epitome of living brilliantly resilient. We actually lived. So honestly, the book just flowed out because we were living it and learning from having, over 200 shows, and we recorded for 100 days in a row, and I learned more in the past year than I have in a very long time. So putting our work out there now is a culmination of all of that we are so proud of, and we so believe in, because we're the products of it.
Right. Right.
Sure.
Yeah, it's not like writing a self-help book from a perspective of someone who needs no help.
Right. Oh, we definitely needed the help for sure. We've interviewed people who have taught us. Kristin always says, "Oh, we say we're going to put this out there to help other people, but it's all about us. We just want to fix ourselves."
Well, and I can think of a boatload of times when at the end of a sermon on Sunday, I started to wonder, how did he know that was my life? And I'm kind of wondering if in the audiences that you've been able to communicate with, whether it's in person or through podcasts or whatever, if you hear from people who say, how did you know?
Oh, yeah.
All the time.
Yeah, it's amazing. And I really think it's because it's real. Like, we did it and it worked for us. And now, I mean, we've got people. We worked with a woman we were doing these 15-minute calls before we were getting into a coaching program, just to see if it was going to be a fit for people that were interested. In 15 minutes, this woman, who is a successful business person, we were talking about different pieces of our journey and her journey, and where things and the core values and how to serve her community better. I think it was really the element of the core values she got to. She took her business into this whole new direction just from that conversation of the real stuff that we've experienced. I mean, it's been one thing after the other with folks like that.
And I would say this too, Bill. The details of everyone's journey may differ, but the common ground is the emotion and the heart that you bring to it. And whether not everybody has blindness or addiction or heroin addiction. Not everybody has that, clearly. But what everybody does have is the feeling, the pain, the desire to make things better. All of those things kind of level the playing field. So every time people come up to us, it'll be I had so needed to hear that today, because our journeys may be different in the details, but what we want out of life is the same.
Yeah.
My wife says everybody has crap.
Yep.
That's kind of the summary. And quite often, those who are struggling with the largest wheelbarrow full of it try to act the exact opposite. And so you'll see them put on a front, and they'll have the social media posts where everything is right out of a magazine, and it looks like everything is absolutely perfect. And if I could only be like them. Mm-hmm. And in reality, once you dig past the first layer, they're falling apart. They're wondering what life is going to consist of in the days ahead. And I always try to keep that in mind when I hear from people who listen either to this program or who we encounter in everyday life. Everybody has a story. That's one of the reasons that this program exists. We love telling stories. But there's a call to being real. There's a benefit to being real that I don't know if everybody grasps. When the two of you first started on this brilliantly resilient journey, did you have to kind of make either a subconscious or maybe a conscious decision to just let it all out and be raw? Because it could be more comfortable sometimes to keep some barriers up.
I think that we were both, when we met, each other, we had both been through so much that any pretense of everything's great, we were both like, we don't have time for that. We don't have time to pretend. It's exhausting. And honestly, when you were talking about that idea of putting that, that sort of face on everything, it is exhausting. Now, I'm not saying you want to show your worst moments to everyone, but I don't have the energy to pretend. So on the days when I'm not up, I'd say to her, I got nothing today. I got nothing, and we will say those kinds of things on the air too, because it's really important that people know that there are days that even people who seem to have it together, there are days when you got nothing.
Yeah. And I'm going to say though, that I think that we got to cheat a little bit on this one, because when we decided to turn those cameras on our Zoom things and then just run our show every day live for 100 days, and then we started sporadically pulling back a little bit, the entire world was like flatlined and didn't know what to do, and everything was a mess. So anything that we could put out there to be of service to them, they were going to take in and have no judgment. So it didn't matter. I mean, I didn't have the lights that I have here now. I didn't have oh gosh, for your listeners that can't see me, I've got this long curly hair, right? When you can't get into a salon for 4 months, you got to kind of just go, okay. So I would have I had an Eagles hat, then a Phillies hat. And then people started writing into us like, Kristin, we haven't seen the Eagles hat in a while. Like they were getting into it, We just had to let go of, it's part of our process is letting go of the outcome. Like you just can't be married to that. It's just we were just about being of service and who could we help? Because there were so many people in need, and it just bloomed from there. Is it tough to see some of our original episodes? Yep. Especially when one time Mary Fran's like, before we hit record, she's like, what exactly is happening with your hair? I'm like, I just don't know. I don't know.
Meanwhile, I was in the bathroom cutting my own because, it was a mess. But, I think we long ago gave up on, of course we want things to be good and we try to put out the best product, but we also try to say to people, if we don't know what we're doing, we call ourselves doctors of nothing. Like we are doctors of nothing. We are the first ones now, because of our personal experiences, to put up our hands and go, hello, we don't know what we're doing. Can anybody help us? Because it's a waste of time to do anything else. It's just a waste. I don't have that kind of time.
You may be surprised to learn this, but here on The Big Impact, we spend very little time on hair-related concerns. Quite amazing.
I'm stunned, Bill. I know.
Yeah, this look didn't take a whole lot of preparation, believe it or not. As we wrap up our time together, what are the different ways, along with the book, of course, what are the different ways our audience can engage with you? You've mentioned on the air and brought in videos and that kind of thing. So set the scene for where everybody can go and connect with you, and then we'll make sure everybody's reminded of the book called Brilliantly Resilient, available all the book places. So,
well, you can find everything at our hub, which is our website at brilliantlyresilient.net. But we strongly encourage and invite everybody to join the Facebook community. It's a free group on Facebook. And that's where it's a tribe of people that encourage each other. You'll find inspiration there every day for resetting, rising, revealing your brilliance. Our show airs there every Monday, which then becomes drops as a podcast midweek. We bring folks back that we've had on the show to see how they're doing. Sometimes they've had another sucker punch. Sometimes their lives have taken off. But that's really where our community is strong and supportive, and it really helps you get through those daily sucker punches.
Well, I can't thank you enough for sharing your story with us. It's powerful, and we want to recommend to everybody, some way, shape, or form, whether it's the book or through the Facebook group, engage with Kristin and Mary Fran and Brilliantly Resilient. Ladies, thank you so much.
Thanks for having us.
Great. Thank you.